hit me so clearly about a year ago with my son, right? So my son at the time was 9 years old, and he rides motorcycles, old dirt bikes. And what's become very popular is these electric pit bikes. And by the way, these electric little dirt bikes, they're insane. The torque on them, the speed on them, like they are like
They're vehicles.
fast.
They're vehicles.
Yeah, yeah. So we got him a new bike, and this is when I learned I blame, right? And I get on, the bike gets delivered, and we sit down. We're like, all right, buddy, just remember, it's a new bike, it's a bigger bike, right? Throttle control. Let's just kind of be gentle on the throttle. There's a lot of torque on it. Okay, let's make sure. Can you plant your feet? All right, you got your gear on. And by the way, I'm like the best fucking father in the world at this point, right? Because I'm nurturing and I'm kind and I'm supportive and I'm coaching and I'm mentoring. And I'm just thinking to myself, man, I should write a book on parenting. And as he began to he turned the bike on and then obviously twisted the throttle just a little too much, a little too fast. Bike shot forward, went up, he flipped back. And before he even hit the ground, what came out of my mouth was, what did I effing tell you? Right? We just went through all of this. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to have throttle control. Blame, accusation, tell. And this happens so fast, right? Because as human beings, as you described, we tend to react more than we tend to respond, right? And I teach this concept called,
but that's fear.
yeah,
At the end of the day, all that is your direct response to being fearful that he injured himself. It's not you don't have time to think. You
yeah,
want to be better, but in that moment, you're petrified for him.
correct. But, my father used to mess me up with this stuff, right? He'd be like, I'm only yelling at you because I love you. And I'm only angry because I was scared. And when I was 7, 8, and 9, my little sort of child brain couldn't process that. There was just this big sort of scary man. What's crazy about that was I swore I was never going to do that to my kid. I would never turn into my father. And as they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And what happened in that moment? Whack. Now, at this point, my son welts up in tears and he gets off and he's like, I don't want to ride anymore. Now, if I had a moment of clarity in that point, I would have said, oh, let me just kind of pause here and respond. But of course, we double down on the blame. No, 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 no. Right? You will get back. And this was your fault. And you should have had more throttle control. And you're not giving up. And again, my son didn't look at me and go, oh, dear Father, thank you for being such a kind, mentoring sort of, individual that's guiding me in life. He walked off and it hit me like a ton of bricks. I teach something called the stop concept. And the stop concept is basically this. It's a 4.5 second rule, right? 4.5 seconds. Can I pause for 4.5 seconds? Because that 4.5 seconds is going to give me a little bit of space and time to get to what we call that frontal lobe, right? That intelligent brain that separates us all from like Neanderthals, and give me moments of clarity and objectivity. Because here's what's messed up about it. What's my objective in that situation? And there's two objectives. Objective number one, I want him to get back on the bike. Objective number two, I want him to feel safe. And maybe we want to reverse that. I want him to feel safe, and I want him to get back on the bike. And if I took that moment, that 4.5 second, right, and went, whoo, hold on a second, I might have asked him this question. Hey, buddy, are you okay? Right? Was that scary? Right? Yeah, the bike's pretty intense, right? Like that throttle's a little more sensitive than the last one you were. And he would have gone, yeah, Dad, you're right. Okay, do you want to get back on the bike? Yeah, Dad. Okay, cool. Do you want to want to sort of go to this field here? It could have been a much different moment. And here's what's messed up. We call it emotional markers or emotional memories. What did I do to my son in that moment, right? I left him with what we call a negative emotional memory or a negative emotional marker, right? He's going to have that sort of imprint for the rest of his life, which is like, man, I remember when I got that bike. Now, here's what's messed up, right? He's now graduated to the next bike. So the next bike's just been ordered. And this thing is like way bigger and way faster. So the good news is as we said, I could mess it up today and tomorrow I could be better. So I am thinking, all right, what am I going to do to make sure? But it's the 4.5 seconds. 4.5 seconds will change your life. 4.5 seconds will give you the difference between reaction and response. 4.5 seconds will give you the difference between where am I going or where should I go and where do I not want to go. And more people need to operate with the 4.5 second rule. And in fact, the title of the book right now is called The Blame Game. But, someone said to me the other day, they're like, we should change the title to the 4.5 second rule. I'm like, I kind of like that.
That is good. I was thinking about the 4.5 minutes that you spend apologizing for the way that we responded, because I know I've done that many a times. I come back to one when my son was probably not too much older than your son in the reference point, and he was taking a penalty kick in a game, and he literally drove the entire team back, scored like two goals. They were down by one. He scores this PK, they tie it, or they go ahead by one. I don't remember what it was. But
Yeah.
the reality was the ref didn't blow the whistle and he took the kick and made it. And so then the ref tells him what he did wrong, and he goes back and he makes the exact same mistake a second time.
Yeah.
And it might have been a third, but I think it was just a second time. And then we proceed to get in the car. And, I had forgotten all about the fact that he did all these phenomenal things. And I just kept asking him about
Yeah.
why didn't you, he told you what you needed to do and you didn't listen.
Yeah.
And, I proceeded to probably, my wife would say I berated him all the way home. He would probably tell you the same thing. I didn't feel like I was doing that, but I'm a high intensity person. So
Right.
what we feel is low intensity is often over intense. And so when I get to the point of the 4.5 minutes, I honestly got home and was embarrassed. And I
Yeah.
went back in his room and he's sitting by himself. And I sat next to him and I said, dude,
Yeah.
sometimes I go backwards in life. Sometimes I forget what the whole purpose of us falling in love with a game or playing this game or having failure, like all these things. And
Yeah.
what I showed you is I am an imperfect parent. I am 100% not perfect. And the difference between my dad and my dad's great. I love my dad. He's a great father. But there was never that extra 4.5 minutes. It was the this is gonna hurt me more than you. It was the old stuff that they told, but there was very rarely the admitting I made a mistake. And I think to some extent, we're as fathers, we're imperfect. We do the best that we can and we screw up way more than we want to.
Right.
But my analogy to him the other day was, look, you go play a game and you love playing. Every game is not your best game. But let's say the 85 to 90% of the time you play your best. That puts you at a Division I college level. You play much better than that. You're starting to get to a pro level, right? I said, here's the thing. I am an imperfect father, but 85 to 90% of the time, I'm really good.
Right.
And I'm working at getting better to be 88 or 92 or whatever it may be. But just remember, my goal for you is to be better than me. So maybe you get to 97, maybe you get to 93, but you're going to be a little better than me because I'm providing you the humility to know I'm doing the best I can. What you
Yeah.
did was you reacted, you learn from it. You're writing a book based on the mentality you want to develop and teach, and it's all going to show that imperfection exists in all of us, and it's how we respond to that and build off it that really separates those that become more successful and those that wallow in their same bullshit over and over again in their lives.
1,000%. As you were talking, you talked about the penalty kick. We're in World Cup right now, right? And I was watching the France versus Spain game yesterday, and I'm with a buddy who's not the biggest sort of soccer fan, and I'm not either. I've just kind of jumped on the bandwagon right now because we live in Costa Rica and like soccer is everything here.
Yeah.
So
It's everything everywhere. Everywhere.
everywhere, exactly. Anyway, so we're sitting watching the game, and Mbappe went and he had a few kicks on goal, but he kicked them over the net, right? And my buddy's sitting next to me. He's like, "Why is the guy kicking the ball over the net? He should be kicking it in the net, right? This guy's kicking it over the net." And I thought, there is the why and the blame. I'm like, I promise you, this guy is not trying to do so, right? And probably way more disappointed. But, I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of that stop concept. You were talking about like 4.5 minutes afterwards. That's a great example of the stop concept. A lot of times people think the pause and the stop has to happen before. Like that's when we really are masterful, right? So the stimuli hits us, the conversation, the emotion, and we go, ah, let me pause there. Right? That's when you know you're a Jedi master. Fantastic, right? But the stop can happen 4.5 seconds afterwards, 1 minute into it. Like the reaction, the conversation, the hammering, the berating, the telling, I found myself doing with my wife this morning. I was about walking out the door. She asked me a question. I'm like, ah. I was like, oh, let me just stop right there, right? So the success, and I teach people a lot around emotional intelligence, the success of emotional intelligence isn't not feeling. It's actually the ability to catch it. And what we want to do is we want to get faster at catching it. Now, the worst question we can ask another human being, right, is the why question. Because the why question never seeks solution, resolution, outcome, where we're going, right? It actually seeks defense, justification, rationalization. And if we can stop asking the why question and start to flip it a little more to the what and the how question from a psychological standpoint, that'll change your life, like internally, self. Like stop asking ourselves why. Why did I do this? Why did I react? Why did I yell? Why did I berate? And start to ask that, which gets us to play to the 80, 90%. Hey, what created that reaction? And how do I want to handle this moving forward? Right? What was that stimuli? And how do I want to respond to that stimuli? And again, this is all in the pause. And the pause for the audience is not this mystical thing that hits you one day. It is a conscious effort to practice. And people can do that by counting, right? They can do it by just going, all right, where am I going? What do I want? How do I want to get there? So to the audience, if there's one thing you take away, and I hope you take a lot away from today's conversation, but stop asking why to self and other people.